The park sat silent, a sanctuary of golden leaves and soft wind, until Officer Ryan Cole decided to break the peace. He saw an elderly black man sitting on a bench feeding birds, and saw only a target, someone to bully, someone to dominate. He saw the color of the man's skin and assumed he was a vagrant, a criminal in waiting. He slapped the cuffs on with a sneer, ignoring the man's calm warnings. He didn't know that the vagrant was Chief Jerome Brooks, a retired police chief with decades of service and a Medal of Valor. He didn't know he was arresting a legend. And he certainly didn't know that before the day was through, his career would be over, and a war would begin that would leave one of them in a wheelchair and the other standing tall. This is the story of how arrogance met its match. The sun in Briarcliff filtered pale and golden through the turning leaves of the massive oak trees in Maple Grove Park. It was the public face of a gated community, manicured, silent, and excessively orderly. For Chief Jerome Brooks, it was the closest thing he had found to peace since leaving the chaotic, blood-slicked streets of Detroit. He was a man who carried his history in his posture. He sat on the wrought iron bench with a straight spine, his shoulders broad and set, a habit from decades of wearing a Kevlar vest. He wore a charcoal wool coat over a crisp white button-down. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine that reflected the autumn sky. To anyone with eyes, he looked like a grandfather taking a moment to breathe. To anyone with a soul, he looked like a man who deserved his rest. On his lap sat a small paper sack of premium birdseed, a mix of sunflower hearts, millet, and crushed peanuts. He didn't buy the cheap stuff. "There you are," Jerome rumbled, his voice a deep, gravelly bass that seemed to vibrate the air around him. "Don't fight. There's enough for everyone." He scattered a handful of seeds near the toe of his Oxford shoe. A flurry of wings descended. Sparrows, a bold blue jay, and his favorite, a bright red northern cardinal that he had secretly named Red. Jerome watched them, his dark eyes softening. For decades, his eyes had scanned crowds for weapons, for nervous ticks, for the flash of a muzzle. Now he just wanted to watch the birds eat. The peace was shattered not by a noise, but by a presence. A shadow fell over the bench, blocking the sun. The gravel crunched, a heavy, deliberate sound. Military-style boots. Jerome didn't look up immediately. He finished dusting his hands in a slow, methodical movement. He took a breath, smelling the cheap cologne and the metallic tang of gun oil, before he even saw the uniform. "You, get up." The voice was young, reedy, and vibrating with an unearned sense of power. Jerome slowly turned his head. Standing a short distance away was Officer Ryan Cole. He had a buzz cut that was a bit too long and a uniform that strained at the buttons not from muscle, but from a softness he tried to hide with a tactical vest overloaded with gear. He had a taser, a baton, 2 spare mags, a radio, a tourniquet, and a handgun that looked too big for his hip. "Afternoon, officer," Jerome said, his voice level. "Can I help you?" "I said get up," Cole barked, stepping closer. The birds scattered in a panic of wings. Jerome watched them go, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face. "I'm resting, son," Jerome said. "Is there a problem?" "Don't call me son," Cole snapped. His hand drifted to his belt, hovering near the taser. "We've had reports of vagrants, loitering, drug activity in the park." Jerome looked around the empty park. "I see. And I fit the description?" "You fit the profile," Cole said, his eyes scanning Jerome with open disdain. "Expensive coat sitting on a bench in the middle of the day, probably stolen. Let's see some ID." Jerome sighed, the sound of a man who has had this conversation 1,000 times. "Officer, I live 3 streets over, 214 Pine Street. I'm a retired civil servant. I'm just feeding the birds." Feeding wildlife is a violation of city ordinance, Cole lied. And refusing to identify yourself to a law enforcement officer is an arrestable offense. Stand up now. Jerome calculated the distance. He assessed Cole's stance. The boy's weight was all wrong, too far forward. If Jerome wanted to, he could sweep Cole's leg and have him pinned in seconds. But Jerome wasn't that man anymore, and he knew that a black man fighting a cop in Briarcliff would end up dead, not vindicated. Jerome stood up slowly, unfolding his tall frame. He towered over Cole. "I'm going to reach for my wallet," Jerome said, narrating his movements, a survival habit. "It is in my back right pocket." "Don't you move," Cole yelled, panic flaring in his eyes at Jerome's size. "Hands on your head. Interlock your fingers." "Officer, this is unnecessary." "Do it!" Cole screamed, his hand unholstering the taser and pointing it at Jerome's chest. The red laser dot danced on Jerome's expensive wool coat. Jerome froze. He looked at the laser, then he looked at Cole. "You are making a mistake," Jerome said, his voice dropping to a terrifyingly calm register. "A very expensive mistake. Turn around." Cole advanced, shoving Jerome hard against the bench. "You're under arrest for loitering, resisting, and disorderly conduct." Cole grabbed Jerome's wrists, wrenching them behind his back. He slapped the handcuffs on tight, too tight. The metal bit into the bone. "These are too tight," Jerome stated. "Check the spacing. You're supposed to be able to fit a pinky finger between the cuff and the wrist." "Shut up," Cole grunted, shoving Jerome forward. "You don't tell me how to do my job. You're going to the station, Grandpa. Let's see how smart you are in a holding cell." As Cole marched Jerome toward the patrol car, a Dodge Charger with the engine idling, Jerome saw a neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, walking her poodle. She stopped, staring in horror. Jerome gave her a small, reassuring nod. "Don't worry," the nod said. "I've got this." But inside, the fire was kindling. It wasn't the rage of a criminal. It was the cold, hard fury of a master craftsman watching an apprentice burn down the workshop. The ride to the precinct was a display of petty tyranny. Cole drove aggressively, braking hard at stop signs to make Jerome jerk forward in the back seat. The separation screen was scratched and dirty. "You comfortable back there?" Cole taunted, looking in the rearview mirror. "Not so tough now, are you? Bet you thought you could just waltz into Briarcliff and do whatever you want." "I bought my house in Briarcliff," Jerome said calmly. "I paid cash." Cole laughed, a cruel, jagged sound. "Yeah, right. Drug money. Or did you rob a bank back in the day?" Jerome didn't answer. He was memorizing Cole's badge number. He was noting the procedural violations in his head. 1, no Miranda read. 2, excessive force with restraints. 3, lack of probable cause. 4, unsafe transport. They arrived at the Briarcliff police station, a clean, modern building of brick and glass. It was quiet. This wasn't the chaotic precinct Jerome had once commanded. This was a library with guns. Cole hauled Jerome out of the car, gripping his arm tightly. He paraded him through the back door, chin up, looking for applause. The booking area was staffed by Sergeant Denise Harper. Jerome knew the type immediately. Decades on the force. Tired, cynical, but competent. She was sipping coffee and reading a report. "Look what I caught, Sarge," Cole announced, shoving Jerome toward the counter. "Found him in Maple Grove Park. Refused ID, resisting, belligerent." Harper didn't look up at first. "Name?" "Wouldn't give it," Cole said. "John Doe." My name is Jerome Brooks." His voice filled the room. Sergeant Denise Harper stopped. Her pen hovered over the paper. That voice, it had a cadence, a command that you didn't hear often in Briarcliff. She looked up. She saw the coat. She saw the dignified face, the graying beard, the eyes that held a storm of intelligence. And then she saw the handcuffs. She squinted. "Brooks, Jerome Brooks." "That's correct, Sergeant," Jerome said politely. "I believe we met briefly at the Tri-State Law Enforcement Conference in Chicago. You were there with Captain Henderson." The color drained from Sergeant Denise Harper's face so fast, it looked like a curtain falling. She stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Oh my God," she whispered. "What?" Cole asked, looking between them, a frown creasing his forehead. "Sarge, he's just a perp. I'm gonna throw him in cell 2. "Cole!" Harper came around the desk, her hands shaking slightly. "Take those cuffs off right now." "What? Why?" "He's under arrest. I said take them off." Harper roared. The sound echoed off the cinder block wall, startling the dispatcher in the corner. "Do you have any idea who this is?" Cole stepped back, confused. "He's nobody." He was feeding birds. "This is Chief Jerome Brooks," Harper hissed, pointing a trembling finger at Jerome. "Retired Chief of Police of the Detroit 12th Precinct. He is the man who wrote the standard operating procedure for urban de-escalation. He is a legend, you idiot, Cole." Cole froze. He looked at Jerome. The vagrant was gone. In his place stood a titan. Jerome looked at Cole, his expression unreadable. "The keys, officer." "My wrists are swelling." Cole fumbled for his keys. He couldn't find the hole. His hands were shaking. The power dynamic had flipped so violently he was getting whiplash. The cuffs clicked open. Jerome rubbed his wrists, inspecting the red indentations. "Thank you, Sergeant. Now, is Patrick Donnelly in?" Yes, sir," Harper stammered. "I'll get him." "Patrick and I go way back," Jerome said to the room at large. "I was his training officer years ago." Cole looked like he was going to vomit. Moments later, Chief Patrick Donnelly burst into the booking room. He was a balding man with a soft midsection. A man who had moved to the suburbs to escape the stress of the city. He looked at Jerome, then at Cole, then back at Jerome. "Jerome," Donnelly breathed. "I have no words." "I have a few," Jerome said dryly. "But let's talk in your office. And bring Officer Cole." Inside the office, the dressing down was legendary. "He profiled me, Patrick," Jerome said, sitting in the leather guest chair while Cole stood at attention, sweating through his uniform. "He saw a black man in a coat and decided I was a criminal. He didn't ask questions. He didn't investigate. He escalated." "Cole, what the hell were you thinking?" Donnelly demanded, slamming his hand on the desk. "He looks suspicious, Chief," Cole mumbled, his defiance wilting but still present. "He was loitering." "I was sitting on a bench," Jerome snapped. "That is what benches are for." Jerome stood up and walked over to Cole. He leaned in close. "You wear that badge like a crown," Jerome whispered. "But it's a burden. It's a service. You think you're a wolf, son? You're not. You're just a scared boy with a gun. And that makes you dangerous." "I want him suspended," Jerome told Donnelly, "pending a full internal investigation. And I want a written apology." "Done," Donnelly said immediately. "Cole, give me your badge and gun. You're on unpaid leave effective immediately." Cole's face twisted in hate. He unclipped his gun belt and slammed it onto the desk. He ripped the badge off his shirt, tearing a button. "This is bull," Cole spat. "You're taking his side because he's a chief. He's just an old man. Get out, Donnelly said. Cole turned to leave, but he paused at the door. He looked at Jerome. You think this is over? Cole said, his voice trembling with rage. You think you can just come into my town and humiliate me? It's not your town, Cole, Jerome said. It's the people's town. Now get out before I add insubordination to your file. Cole left, slamming the door so hard the glass rattled. I'm sorry, Jerome, Donnelly said, wiping his brow. He's got problems. I'll handle him. You better, Jerome warned, because if he comes near me again, I won't be calling you. I'll be calling my lawyers. And Patrick, you know how I handle threats. Donnelly nodded. He knew. Jerome walked out of the station a free man, but he felt the weight of the encounter. He knew men like Cole. They didn't learn lessons. They nursed grudges. And Jerome was right. The war had just begun. The peace he sought in Maple Grove Park began to slip away as small disturbances started appearing. One morning, Jerome woke up to find his garbage cans overturned, trash strewn across his manicured lawn, coffee grounds and eggshells smeared on his driveway. Raccoons, he told himself. But raccoons didn't slash tires. Soon after, he came out to his vintage Mustang, his pride and joy, to find the sidewalls of both rear tires sliced open. It was a precise cut, a knife. Jerome stood in his driveway, the cold wind biting his face. He looked down the street. A dark sedan was parked 2 blocks away. As soon as Jerome looked at it, the engine started and it pulled away slowly. He recognized the car. It was Cole's personal vehicle, a black Chevy Impala. Jerome called Donnelly. I can't prove it was him, Jerome, Donnelly said, sounding tired on the phone. I questioned him. He has an alibi. His mom says he was home all night. His mom is lying, Jerome said. Patrick, he's escalating. You know the pattern. I have him on suspension, Jerome. I can't put a detail on your house for slashed tires. I don't have the manpower. Fine, Jerome said. I'll handle my own security. Jerome called a local contractor he trusted. Before long, 214 Pine Street was a fortress. High-definition night vision cameras were installed at every corner. Motion sensor floodlights. A reinforced steel core for the front door frame. But Cole wasn't done. He had friends on the force, friends like Officer Blake Sutton. Later, Jerome was driving to the grocery store. He was obeying the speed limit, signaling every turn. Blue lights flashed behind him. Jerome pulled over. He kept his hands on the wheel. He started the recording app on his phone and placed it in the cup holder, screen down but microphone up. Officer Blake Sutton waddled up to the window. License and registration? Sutton said, smirking. Reason for the stop? Jerome asked. Tail lights out, Sutton said. They were working when I left the driveway minutes ago, Jerome said. Well, they ain't working now. Step out of the vehicle. Jerome stepped out. Sutton walked to the back of the Mustang. He held his heavy Maglite flashlight. Crack. The sound of plastic shattering was unmistakable. Look at that, Sutton said, pointing to the fresh hole in the red plastic, shards still falling onto the asphalt. Busted. That's a safety violation. And is that the smell of alcohol I detect? Jerome stared at Sutton. I haven't had a drink in years, Sutton. And we both know you just broke that light. My dash cam is running, by the way. Rear facing. Sutton's smirk faltered. He glanced at the rear window. A small camera lens blinked red. Get out of here, Sutton muttered, shoving the license back at Jerome. Consider this a warning. Warning received, Jerome said. He drove home, his heart pounding. They were trying to frame him. A DUI charge would ruin his reputation, maybe even affect his pension. They were trying to destroy him. That night, Jerome sat in his study looking at the footage from the dash cam. It clearly showed Sutton swinging the flashlight. He picked up his phone. He dialed a number in Chicago. "The Cochran firm, how may I direct your call?" "I need to speak to Emily Brooks," Jerome said. "Tell her it's her father, and tell her to bring the war chest." Emily arrived soon after. She was sharp as a tack and possessed a fury that made grown men tremble. She drove a Porsche Cayenne and wore a suit that screamed billable hours. She set up a command center in Jerome's dining room. "This is systematic harassment," Emily said, reviewing the footage. Title 42, Section 1983, Deprivation of Rights under Color of Law. We can sue the department, the city, and Cole personally. "I don't just want a lawsuit, Emily," Jerome said, looking out the window at the darkening street. "I want to stop him. He's gonna hurt someone. If not me, then the next black man he sees in the park." "We need to flush him out," Emily said. "Make a public statement. Force Donnelly to fire him." "There's a town hall meeting coming up," Jerome said. "Donnelly will be there." "Perfect." Emily smiled a cold, predatory smile. "Let's go make a scene." But they didn't know that Cole was watching. He was parked down the street using binoculars. He saw Emily arrive. He saw the files. "Lawyers," Cole spat, sitting in the dark cab of his truck. He took a swig from a flask of whiskey. "They think they can use the law. I am the law." He reached under his seat and pulled out a burner phone. He typed a message to a private group chat titled, "The Blue Shield." "Target is bringing in legal. Need to accelerate timeline. Who's with me?" 3 dots appeared, then a reply. "We got your back, brother. Let's teach them a lesson." The storm was coming. And this time it wouldn't be just a broken taillight. The Briarcliff Community Center was a brick-and-mortar testament to the town's wealth. Vaulted ceilings, polished mahogany floors, and a scent of beeswax and old money. On a typical night, the town hall meeting would be a sleepy affair, discussing zoning laws for fence heights or the budget for the annual Tulip Festival. But the air was electric. Word had spread. Jerome Brooks sat in the front row, his posture rigid, his hands resting on his knees. Beside him sat Emily, a shark in a silk blouse, her laptop connected to the projector system. The room was packed. Neighbors who had seen the police cruisers parked outside Jerome's house for weeks whispered behind their hands. Chief Patrick Donnelly sat at the long table on the stage, looking like a man facing a firing squad. Beside him was the mayor, a nervous man deeply concerned with property values. "The floor is open for new business," the mayor announced, his voice wavering. Emily stood up. She didn't walk to the microphone. She marched. "My name is Emily Brooks," she began, her voice projecting clearly without the need for the mic at first. "I am an attorney with the Cochran firm in Chicago, and I am here to represent my father, Chief Jerome Brooks, regarding a systemic campaign of harassment by officers of this precinct." A murmur ran through the crowd. "We are aware of the complaint," Donnelly said quickly, leaning into his microphone. "As I told your father, Miss Brooks, these are internal personnel matters. We are investigating Officer Cole's conduct." "Investigation is a slow word, Chief," Emily said, plugging the HDMI cable into her laptop. "Let's speed it up." The massive screen behind the stage flickered to life. The audio hissed, then popped. It was the dash cam footage from Jerome's Mustang. The video showed the sunlit street, the blue lights, and then Officer Blake Sutton walking to the back of the car. The audience watched in stunned silence as Sutton looked around, raised his heavy maglite, and swung. Crack. The sound was amplified by the auditorium speakers. It sounded like a gunshot. Oops! Sutton's voice sneered from the speakers. Busted! The crowd gasped. Mrs. Thompson, the neighbor with the poodle, covered her mouth. Oh my heavens, she whispered loudly. Emily paused the video on Sutton's smirking face. This, Emily said, pointing at the screen, is not policing. This is racketeering. This is a gang with badges. My father was stopped for a broken taillight that was broken during the stop by Officer Blake Sutton, a known associate of Officer Ryan Cole. She clicked a slide. A timeline appeared. Illegal detention of Jerome Brooks. Vandalism of Brooks' residence. Trash. Vandalism of vehicle. Tires slashed. Fraudulent traffic stop and property damage. We have sworn affidavits, Emily continued, from 3 neighbors who saw a black Chevy Impala registered to Ryan Cole parked on Pine Street during the times of the vandalism. She turned to face Donnelly. The room was so quiet you could hear the hum of the projector fan. Chief Donnelly, Emily said, her voice dropping to a deadly calm. You have a rogue element in your department. A racist, vindictive cell that targets citizens. If Cole and Sutton are not terminated effective immediately, I will file a federal civil rights lawsuit against this town. That will bankrupt Briarcliff. I will sue for the department's budget. I will sue for your pension. I will own this town hall by the time I am done. Donnelly was sweating profusely. The mayor looked like he was about to faint. The public pressure was palpable. People were pulling out their phones, live streaming the moment. I have seen enough. Donnelly stood up. Officer Blake Sutton is hereby terminated effective immediately, and I am formally upgrading Officer Cole's suspension to termination. Pending the final paperwork in the morning, we will purge this corruption. The room erupted in applause. Jerome didn't clap. He just watched Donnelly, his eyes narrowing. He knew that cornering a rat didn't make it disappear. It made it bite. Miles away in a dimly lit basement apartment that smelled of stale beer and gun oil, Ryan Cole watched the live stream on his phone. His face was a mask of contorted fury. He watched the town he thought he owned turn against him. He watched his chief, the man he was supposed to trust, throw him to the wolves. Terminated, Cole whispered. He threw the phone across the room. It shattered against the wall. He wasn't a cop anymore. The badge was gone. The pension was gone. His identity, the only thing that made him feel like a man, was stripped away by an older black man and his lawyer daughter. The burner phone on the table buzzed. It was the group chat, the Blue Shield. Cole, did you see that? We have to move. A pause. Then a reply from Sutton. It's over, Ryan. Donnelly fired me. I'm out. I'm deleting this chat. Don't contact me. One by one, they abandoned him. The brotherhood evaporated the moment the heat got too high. Cole stared at the screen, his breathing jagged. He was alone. No, he hissed, standing up. He walked to his closet. He pushed aside the hanging clothes and unlocked a heavy steel safe. Inside lay his personal arsenal, an AR-15 with a holographic sight, a pump-action shotgun, a tactical vest he had bought online, illegal for civilians, but he had kept it. I'm not the criminal, he muttered, his eyes wide and unblinking, his mind fracturing under the pressure of his own narcissism. They are. They invaded my town. He grabbed the rifle. He grabbed the vest. He reached into the back of the safe and pulled out a bottle of whiskey, taking a long, burning pull. If I'm going down, he said to the empty room, I'm taking the chief with me. But he didn't mean Donnelly. He meant the real chief. The one on Pine Street. The storm hit Briarcliff in the dead of night. It was a violent late autumn squall, stripping the last of the leaves from the trees and lashing the streets with freezing rain. The wind howled like a wounded animal, rattling the windows of the colonial houses at 214 Pine Street. The house was dark, but it wasn't asleep. Jerome Brooks sat in the armchair in the living room facing the front door. He wasn't wearing his pajamas. He was wearing dark cargo pants and a black tactical sweater. On the side table next to a cold cup of tea sat his Sig Sauer P226, his service weapon from Detroit. He knew decades of police work gives a man a sixth sense. It's a prickle on the back of the neck, a taste of copper in the mouth. The public humiliation at the town hall wouldn't end it. It would accelerate it. Cole was a narcissist. Jerome had seen the type 100 times. A narcissist doesn't accept defeat. He seeks annihilation. Dad. Emily stood at the top of the stairs wrapped in a robe. She looked small in the shadows. "Go back to bed, Emily," Jerome said softly. "Why are you sitting in the dark?" "The storm," Jerome lied. "Just checking the windows." "You're expecting him, aren't you?" Emily descended the stairs, her voice trembling slightly. Jerome didn't answer immediately. He picked up the cig, checked the chamber, brass verified, and set it back down. "Cole has nothing left to lose," Jerome said. "A man with nothing to lose is the most dangerous thing on earth. Go to the safe room in the basement, Emily. Lock the door. Do not come out until I say my code phrase. Dad, I'm not leaving you." Jerome's voice was a command, a whip crack that silenced her. "This isn't a debate. This is a tactical situation. If he comes to kill. I need to know you are safe so I can do what I need to do. Now go." Emily hesitated, tears stinging her eyes. She saw the shift in her father. The gentle bird watcher was gone. The chief was back. She nodded, turned, and ran softly to the basement door. Jerome waited. The motion sensor light on the driveway flickered on. The rain was coming down in sheets, blurring the camera feed on Jerome's iPad. But he saw it, a shape moving between the hedges. Not a casual walk, a tactical approach. Low crouch, weapon raised. Jerome tapped the screen. One target, heavy weaponry. "He brought a rifle," Jerome whispered. "Coward." Jerome stood up and moved silently into the hallway. He didn't turn on the lights. He knew every creak of his floorboards. He knew the layout of his home better than Cole knew his own soul. Crash. The glass of the kitchen door at the back of the house shattered. Cole didn't pick the lock. He smashed his way in. He wanted terror. He wanted them to know he was there. Jerome heard the crunch of boots on the kitchen tile. He heard the heavy, wet breathing of a man adrenaline dumping. "Brooks!" Cole screamed. The sound was ragged, slurring slightly. He was drunk. "Come out, old man. Time for your medicine." Jerome pressed his back against the wall of the dining room. He held his breath. Cole was moving through the kitchen, sweeping the rifle barrel back and forth, knocking pots and pans off the counters. Clang, crash. "You think you can take my life?" Cole roared. Blam! He fired a shot into the ceiling. Plaster rained down. "I am the police. I am the authority." Jerome closed his eyes for a second, centering himself. Target is intoxicated, erratic, heavy firepower. He is sweeping right to left. Jerome moved. He didn't run away. He hunted. He slipped through the living room shadows, circling around to flank the kitchen entrance. Cole kicked open the door to the dining room, Lightning flashed, illuminating him. He looked like a nightmare, soaked to the bone, eyes wild, the AR-15 held awkwardly against his tactical vest. "Where are you?" Cole taunted. "Hiding under the bed?" "Drop the weapon, Ryan," Jerome said. His voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Cole spun around, firing blindly into the dark living room. Bam, bam, bam. Bullets tore through the drywall, shattering a lamp, shredding the sofa. "Show yourself!" Cole screamed, his magazine clicking empty. He fumbled to reload, his wet hand slipping on the metal. That was the moment Jerome stepped out of the shadows. He didn't shoot. He moved with a terrifying speed. He closed the distance in 3 strides. Cole got the fresh magazine in, but before he could raise the barrel, Jerome was there. Jerome grabbed the barrel of the rifle with his left hand, forcing it up toward the ceiling. With his right hand, he drove the butt of his pistol into Cole's solar plexus. Oof! Cole doubled over, the air rushing out of him. Jerome swept Cole's leg hard. Cole's boots lost traction on the polished floor, and he went down, crashing heavily onto his back. The rifle skittered across the floor. Cole scrambled, reaching for a backup piece, a Glock tucked into his belt. "Don't," Jerome said. Jerome stood over him. The Sig Sauer pointed directly at Cole's face. The laser sight was a steady red dot right between Cole's eyes. "Don't do it, son. It's over." Cole froze. He looked up at the older man. He saw the barrel of the gun, but more terrifying than the gun was the look in Jerome's eyes. It wasn't hate. It was pity. "You," Cole gasped, wheezing for air. "You ruined me. You ruined yourself," Jerome said. "Now roll over, hands behind your back." "Or what?" Cole spat blood between his teeth. "You're going to kill me?" "Do it." I'd rather be dead than Cole's hand twitched toward his belt. Bam! Jerome fired. He didn't aim for the head. He aimed for the shoulder. The bullet tore through Cole's right shoulder, shattering the clavicle and rendering his gun arm useless. Cole screamed, a high, shrill sound that cut through the thunder. He writhed on the floor, clutching his bleeding shoulder. "I said," Jerome repeated, his voice calm over the ringing in his ears. "Hands behind your back." Jerome kicked the backup gun away. He pulled a pair of zip ties from his back pocket. He had prepared them and rolled the sobbing, bleeding Cole onto his stomach. He cinched the ties tight. "Emily," Jerome called out, "call 911. Tell them we have an intruder down. Tell them to send an ambulance." Jerome knelt beside Cole, who was crying now, the adrenaline gone, replaced by the agony of the gunshot wound. "It hurts," Cole sobbed. "It hurts." Jerome pressed a clean towel from the dining table against the wound, applying pressure. "I know." Jerome's hands were steady as he saved the life of the man who tried to kill him. "Pain is a great teacher, Ryan. Try to listen to it." Sirens wailed in the distance, cutting through the storm. The cavalry was coming, but the war was over. The trial of Ryan Cole was not just a legal proceeding. It was a public exorcism for the town of Briarcliff. The county courthouse was besieged by media vans from as far away as New York and Los Angeles. The headline was irresistible: "The retired chief versus the rogue cop." Inside courtroom B, the air was stale and tense. Cole sat at the defense table, his arm in a complex sling, his face pale and gaunt. The arrogance that had defined him in the park was gone, replaced by a jittery, hunted look. His lawyer, a court-appointed defender named David Morgan, looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Jerome Brooks sat in the front row behind the prosecutor's table. He wore his dress uniform, the midnight blue of the Detroit Police Department, gold stars on the collar, his Medal of Valor gleaming on his chest. He didn't wear it for vanity. He wore it to remind the jury of what a real police officer looked like. Emily Brooks had been granted permission to assist the district attorney as a special consultant. She was the architect of Cole's destruction. "Your Honor," Emily said, pacing before the jury box during cross-examination, "the defense claims that Mr. Cole acted in self-defense, that he entered the home of Jerome Brooks believing he was serving a warrant. But let's look at the facts." She turned to Cole, who was sweating on the witness stand. "Mr. Cole," Emily said, her voice sharp, "did you have a warrant?" "I had probable cause," Cole stammered. "He was a threat. He was an elderly man sitting in his living room," Emily corrected. "You broke down his door in the dead of night. You were intoxicated. Your toxicology report showed a blood alcohol level of 0.18. That is twice the legal limit. You weren't serving a warrant, Mr. Cole. You were hunting." "He had a gun," Cole shouted, losing his composure. "He shot me. He shot you after you fired 3 rounds into his living room," Emily said, projecting a photo of the bullet-riddled sofa on the screen. "He shot you in the shoulder to neutralize the threat. He could have shot you in the head. He saved your life, didn't he?" Cole looked down at his lap. "I don't know." "You don't know?" Emily walked closer. "You are alive, Mr. Cole. That is how you know. My father, a man you called a vagrant, a criminal, and a thug, applied the tourniquet that kept you from bleeding out on his dining room floor. He showed you more mercy in those critical minutes than you showed this community in years." The jury was spellbound. The evidence was overwhelming. The dashcam footage of the broken taillight, the text messages from the Blue Shield chat log that the FBI had recovered, and the 911 call where Cole could be heard screaming insults before the shooting started. But the final nail in the coffin came from an unexpected witness. The prosecution called Sergeant Denise Harper to the stand. "Sergeant," the district attorney asked, "did Officer Cole ever express racially biased views in your presence?" Harper took a deep breath. She looked at Cole, then at Jerome. She chose the side of history. "Yes," she said clearly, "multiple times. He bragged about cleaning up the trash in the park. He referred to minority residents as invaders. I was too afraid to report him because his father was the former deputy mayor. But I'm not afraid anymore." A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Cole's head snapped up, betrayal in his eyes. His shield was gone. The jury deliberated and returned with their verdict. When they returned, the foreman, a middle-aged schoolteacher, stood up. His hands didn't shake. "In the matter of the People versus Ryan Cole, we find the defendant on count 1, attempted murder in the first degree, guilty. Count 2, aggravated assault, guilty. Count 3, deprivation of civil rights, guilty. Count 4, burglary with a deadly weapon, guilty." Judge Reynolds looked over his spectacles at Cole. "Mr. Cole, you betrayed the public trust in the most vile manner possible. You used the badge as a shield for your own bigotry. You are sentenced to 25 years in state prison without the possibility of parole for the first 15 years. Cole slumped forward, sobbing into his good arm. The bailiffs moved in. As they hauled him away, he looked back at the gallery. He locked eyes with Jerome. Jerome didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply nodded, a final solemn closing of the book. The bus ride to Riverside State Prison was the longest of Ryan Cole's life. Shackled hand and foot, chained to a metal bench alongside the very people he used to hunt, Cole stared out the wire mesh window at the passing world. He watched the trees blur by, realizing with a sickening lurch in his gut that he wouldn't see a tree without a fence in front of it for 25 years. He was processed in silence. The correctional officers didn't offer him the brotherhood nod he expected. To them, a dirty cop was worse than a criminal. He was a liability. He was stripped, searched, and issued a bright orange jumpsuit that smelled of industrial detergent and other men's sweat. Because of his former status, Cole was placed in administrative segregation, protective custody, but the inmates called it the hole. His cell was small, a concrete slab for a bed, a stainless steel toilet, a slit of a window that showed only a patch of gray sky. For a man who had thrived on the power of roaming the streets, the confinement was a special kind of psychological torture. In the beginning, Cole held on to his rage. He paced the tiny cell like a caged wolf, muttering to himself. He blamed Jerome Brooks. He blamed the chief. He blamed the woke jury. He replayed the moment in the living room 1,000 times, convincing himself that he was the victim, that he was the one who had been wronged. But prison has a way of grinding down even the hardest stones. The isolation began to rot him from the inside out. He spent most of his time alone. The brief recreation was spent in a solitary chain-link dog run where he could smell the fresh air but couldn't touch the grass. From the general population yard, the taunts drifted over the fence like poison gas. "Yo, Officer 4922, a voice would scream. Cole flinched every time they used his old badge number. "You comfortable in there? You want me to call a tow truck for your dignity? Hey, Cole, I got some birdseed for you. Come get it, boy." He was the most hated man in Riverside. The white gangs rejected him because he was damaged goods and a traitor to the badge. The black and Latino gangs wanted his blood. He was an island in an ocean of sharks. Then came the day the protection failed. As he was being escorted to the infirmary for a routine checkup on his gunshot wound, the bullet from Jerome's gun had left him with a permanent ache, a throbbing reminder of the night he lost everything. The escort was a new guard officer, Graves. Graves was young, bored, and, unbeknownst to Cole, heavily in debt to a gang leader in C Block. As they walked down the long linoleum-lined corridor connecting the housing unit to the medical wing, Graves stopped. "Hold up," Graves muttered, tapping his earpiece. "Radio check." He stepped around the corner, leaving Cole alone in the hallway. Cole frowned. "Hey, you can't leave me here," he said, his voice echoing off the cinder blocks. A heavy steel door at the end of the hall clicked. It hadn't been latched properly. Cole's heart hammered against his ribs. He heard the sound of boots, not the heavy, rhythmic tread of guards, but the scuffing, hurried sound of inmates in canvas shoes. 3 men stepped into the hallway. They weren't wearing masks. They didn't need to. In prison, reputation is everything, and taking down a dirty cop was a badge of honor. Cole recognized the leader, a massive man named Tyrone. Serving life for a robbery Cole's old partner had botched. "No," Cole whispered, backing up until his spine hit the cold wall. "Officer Graves, help!" There was no answer. The corridor was silent except for the hum of the fluorescent lights and the approaching footsteps. "You like making people get on the ground, don't you, Ryan?" Tyrone asked, his voice deceptively soft. "You like standing over them, making them feel small?" Cole tried to raise his hands, but the shackles limited his movement. "Stay back, I'll scream." "Scream?" Tyrone smiled. "It's soundproof." The beating was not chaotic. It was surgical. They didn't use shivs. They didn't want him dead. Death was too easy. They wanted to take away the one thing Cole valued most: his physical dominance. They knocked him down with a single punch. While he was on the ground gasping for air, Tyrone grabbed Cole's ankles. "You walk tall on our streets," Tyrone grunted. "Now you crawl." The stomp was precise. A heavy boot came down hard on the lower spine, right at the lumbar junction. Crack. The sound was sickeningly loud, like a dry branch snapping in a winter storm. Cole didn't scream. The air simply left his body in a jagged wheeze. A bolt of white-hot lightning tore through his back, followed instantly by a terrifying cold numbness that rushed down his legs. When the guards finally arrived, the hallway was empty. Cole was lying on the floor staring at the ceiling lights, tears streaming silently down his face. He tried to move his legs. He commanded them to move. They didn't answer. Spring had exploded across Briarcliff with a vengeance. The air was sweet with the scent of blooming jasmine and wet earth. Jerome Brooks stood at a podium in the center of what used to be a vacant, trash-filled lot on the south side of the city, the poorest district, a place the police usually ignored unless they were looking for arrests. Today, the lot was transformed. A brand new building stood there, gleaming with glass and brick. A playground filled with laughing children stretched out behind it. Jerome looked older, his hair now completely white, but he stood as straight as ever. Beside him stood Emily, beaming, and Chief Patrick Donnelly, who looked humbled and grateful. "Thank you all for coming," Jerome said into the microphone. The crowd, a mix of neighborhood residents, city officials, and police officers, went silent. "Darkness visited my home not long ago. A man tried to use fear to break this community. He thought the power came from a gun and a badge. He thought he could act with impunity because of who he was." Jerome paused, looking out at the faces in the crowd. But justice is a funny thing. It doesn't just punish the wicked. It restores the balance. When we won the civil lawsuit against the city and the police union, my daughter asked me what I wanted to do with the money. It was a significant sum, millions of dollars, meant to pay for the pain and suffering caused by Officer Cole. Jerome turned and gestured to the building behind him. A heavy velvet curtain hung over the nameplate above the doors. "I didn't want the money," Jerome said. "I wanted to ensure that no child in this neighborhood ever grows up thinking the only way to have power is to bully someone else. I wanted to turn a legacy of hate into a foundation of love." He nodded to Emily. She pulled the cord. The velvet curtain fell away. The crowd gasped, then murmured. And finally, a ripple of applause started that grew into a roar. The sign above the door read, "The Ryan Cole Center for Youth Development, dedicated to justice, equality, and community policing." "We used his name," Jerome said, a small, grim smile playing on his lips. "We used every penny of his pension, his assets, and the settlement money to build this. Forevermore, the name Ryan Cole will not be associated with racism or police brutality. It will be the place where children learn to read, learn to play, and learn to respect one another. We took his name and we gave it to the people he hated." It was the ultimate victory. Jerome hadn't just defeated Cole. He had rewritten his history. Miles away, in the recreation yard of the Riverside Medical Unit, a wheelchair sat in the shadow of the high wall. Ryan Cole sat in the chair, a blanket draped over his useless legs. He looked much older. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollowed out by depression and medication. He held a crumpled newspaper in his lap. The headline read, "New Youth Center Opens, a Victory for Civil Rights." He saw the photo, Jerome Brooks cutting the ribbon, and above Jerome's head, his own name, Cole, carved in stone, welcoming a diverse crowd of smiling children. Cole's hand shook as he stared at the image. He wanted to rip it up. He wanted to scream, but he had no fight left. The irony crushed him heavier than any boot. He was funding the very future he had tried to suppress. A bird landed on the chain-link fence in front of him. A sparrow. Cole looked at the bird. He remembered the park. He remembered the handcuffs. He remembered the feeling of the wind on his face when he could still walk. "Go away," Cole whispered, his voice cracking. The bird chirped, tilted its head, and flew away, soaring over the razor wire, free and unburdened. Cole watched it go until it was just a speck in the vast blue sky. He gripped the wheels of his chair, turned himself around, and slowly, painfully, rolled himself back toward his cage. Jerome Brooks was right. The badge was a heavy burden, but nothing was heavier than the weight of your own sins. Wow. Now, that is what I call restorative justice. Not only did Jerome survive, but he turned his attacker's name into a symbol of hope for the very community Cole despised. That is a level of chess move karma that you rarely see in real life. In the end, this story leaves us with a truth that hits straight to the heart. Real power never comes from a badge, a gun, or the need to dominate others. It comes from quiet dignity, unwavering integrity, and the strength to rise above hatred without becoming it. Jerome Brooks didn't just survive a vicious attack. He transformed pain into purpose, turning the name of the man who tried to destroy him into a beacon of hope for the very community that man once despised. That kind of grace, that kind of wisdom, reminds us that every act of cruelty we commit eventually circles back, while every choice rooted in character builds something that lasts far beyond our lifetime. No matter how dark the night gets or how loud the storm rages, the light we carry inside, our patience, our courage, and our refusal to let bitterness win, will always be stronger than any weapon. True justice isn't only about punishment. It's about restoration, about planting seeds of goodness where hate once tried to grow. So the next time life tests you with unfairness or cruelty, remember, Chief Brooks sitting peacefully on that park bench, feeding birds with steady hands and a calm heart. Hold on to your dignity. Choose mercy when you can, strength when you must, and never let someone else's darkness dim the light you were born to shine. What about you? Have you ever faced injustice and chosen to respond with grace instead of revenge? Or has a moment of unfair treatment taught you a lesson you'll never forget? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one and love hearing your stories. If this tale moved you, touched your heart, or gave you something to think about, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story of resilience, karma, and quiet triumph. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that goodness still wins. Thank you for watching. Stay strong, stay kind, and always trust the power within you. See you in the next one.